it's funny. I was asking a friend for a name, and she's a bit geeky as well, and mentioned Nacelle, and I'm like, of course not. It's actually harder to find DJs who are playing like the popular music. Everyone here is really trying to make his own sound and take his own niche. I'm always a big believer in, right place, right time. It was us. We pioneered some stuff for sure, but it was gonna happen anyway. Although sometimes if you do something too early, it won't pick up either, right? Could be just who's this idiot spending money on sound, etc. We built a very loyal following, and so that we're still benefiting from the loyalty and the appreciation that everyone has for our events. Are they happy? Are they happy with our service? Are they happy with our team? But also, have they achieved what they set out to achieve? I just got to focus on the entire performance. Like literally the phone did not ring, which is unheard of even in a small event.
Welcome aboard EMIT Talks. On this episode, we dive deep into the success story of Tito El Khachab, or simply Tito, as the world knows him, the mastermind behind Nacelle Sandbox Festival, and more. From his engineering background to organizing some of the biggest musical events in the Middle East and revolutionizing the Egyptian music festival and party scene, we'll be attempting to delve deep into his mindset of success. Join us as we take a dive into the world of music, sound, and the crafting of uniting experiences and more with the one they call Tito, only on EMIT Talks.
Welcome aboard EMIT Talks on this beautiful EMIT boat. It's event season here in Guna, which brings me to our guest, none other, of course, than Tito El Khachab, more affectionately known as Tito, CEO and founder of Nacelle, among many other things. Tito, welcome aboard EMIT Talks.
Nice to be here.
Now, Tito, we are in the middle of event season here in El Guna, but we always start off EMIT Talks by asking pretty much the same question. We believe no success happens without a little bit of failure along the way. So we want to kick it off by asking you some of your most memorable or some of your most favorite failures in your career along the way.
Well, failure is a part of our business, especially in events. You're always taking risk all the time. So basically, success is actually a balance of failures combined with success. For us and for me, I don't know. I think we've anytime we bite off a little more than we can chew, that's kind of where we have failures. Production, a couple of sandboxes had some very late deliveries in terms of production, and really got us to up our game and switch the way we plan things back in the early days. So those failures have really taught me a lot. Then, of course, you have failures on the financial side, of course, as well. And they obviously teach you a lot. But it's important to always have the appetite to take the risk,
And how do you take the risk with those failures? How do you approach them mentally?
I think you just learn from them, and then you diversify. I think it's important. The more you diversify, the more things you do, the more you can balance out, give yourself the opportunity to not be burned as much by the failure, right? Because you're diversified. So it's like, okay, I can balance.
Engineer by degree, Canada, McGill University, you're having a good old time over there. And then all of a sudden, you decided to come back to the motherland, to Egypt, right?
Yeah.
And then throw some incredible parties. I'm going to throw this out there. Even before that, you were known to throw some incredible parties back in the day as a hobby.
Yes. I was always, even when I was in computers, I was always throwing fun, cool parties.
But how did that transition happen from engineer to, purveyor of experiences and events extraordinaire?
Well, definitely still an engineer. And I'm sure the engineering side can drive some people crazy in my company and everything, because I'm very into the details and all that. But I think it happened gradually. In the end, there wasn't a plan to be like, I'm going to get into events. There was just, I was really into music. I was a DJ. I like to collect music from all around the world. So I just wanted a space. I created a space to just play what I want. In Egypt at the time, your bars were, doing regular programming, which makes sense, popular music, etc. And if you wanted to do something different, you had to take over and take an eye for yourself. And that just kind of grew and grew into a beast. And again, the engineering side, I like to just play with equipment, right? So just by going bigger, you're getting bigger speakers, more lights, more setup, more physics involved, and so it's just any opportunity to kind of go bigger. It was just really from a desire partly to just play with toys, I guess, right?
And speaking of toys, correct me if I'm wrong, but how does this link to your engineering side? The word nacelle.
Oh, that's
If you're a Star Trek fan or an aeronautic engineering
yeah,
fan,
exactly.
the word nacelle, as far as I understand it, it's a component of an engine.
Yeah, it's the enclosure of an engine. So like the enclosure, let's say on the big 747 engines, that's called a nacelle. It could also be used for a small spacecraft or something, but in general, and in Star Trek, they're always talking about the nacelles, something's wrong with them, etc. It's funny, I was asking a friend for a name, and she was a bit geeky as well, and mentioned nacelle, and I'm like, of course not. And then the next day I was like, no, that's a really nice name, you know? And so we went for it, and it's funny because everyone would be like, I love the name, what does it mean? Like, so phonetically it sounds really nice, but no one knows really what it means. And conceptually, I mean, that's what we do. We provide the enclosure for the engine, which is the party, the people, the event. So our job is to create that enclosure that safely houses that kind of energy. And, you know, so it just kind of all worked out as a really meaningful name.
It certainly did. You said and you mentioned that people didn't know what nacelle means, but I think now it's very well established in our local Egyptian community and beyond. We're going to talk about later on that the word nacelle kind of means quality of an event, quality of the music that's on display, quality of the sound. And you're in an industry where it's a very ephemeral. You're not selling a physical product. You're selling experiences to people. So
True.
how did that journey happen? And how did you develop this core desire and need to focus on that experience more than profit or anything else?
Well, I think you have to provide the experience first, and you know, I mean, now once you're at a certain level, it's important to always, obviously, it's a business, right? But in the beginning, when you're building, it's important to just have the attitude. If you build it, they will come. When we started, it was sound quality in Egypt was not great.
Yeah.
The standard parties were renting, you know, whatever is cheap. And so my passion for sound, my good friend and I, basically Bessim, and we decided to, at the same time, start a company in sound. And so we acquired like a small set of really good Meyer speakers, and then we just started growing that. And so it was growing with the business as well. So in the beginning, Nacelle was paying more than your average party promoter for sound, because when you're introducing new music, you have to hear the music like it's supposed to be heard, because anyone can hear Madonna on an iPhone and they'll still dance. They know the music, right? So it's familiar to you. But if you're going to try to introduce new sounds, you can't do it people have to hear the real sound, right?
The
Otherwise,
sonic experience,
you
the
can't
true one.
convince people that there's, you know, other stuff than corporate programming, right?
And
so
how important was that? Because I know the story from way back. Nacelle were the first to introduce the concept of great sound to a party. And they were the first to introduce the importance and create that culture among the party goers and event organizers and event goers in general in Egypt, the importance of good sound. You were the first to introduce brands like Function One to Egypt, concepts like quadraphonic sound. From the start until today, how do you feel the impact of your journey as Nacelle and as Center Stage have affected the rest of the market? And today, people don't skimp out on sound.
no, not anymore, which is really good. Everyone is very concerned.
Just
And,
like those guys back there,
right?
they
Yeah,
clearly haven't
exactly.
skimped on the sound.
Yeah. I think, I mean, when speaking about that, it's always, you know, like first and all of that. Like, I'm always a big believer in, you know, right place, right time. You know, it was us. We pioneered some stuff for sure, but it was gonna happen anyway. A lot of the transformation, we were just at the edge of that transformation, right? Because, you know, sometimes if you do something too early, it won't pick up either, right? Could be just who's this idiot spending money on sound, etc. But, you know, right time, right place. And again, it just comes back to the engineering side. It's just, for me, I mean, I want to hear good sound, right? And it's math in the end, right?
Speaking of engineering, from Tito's mind, what are the elements that engineer a successful event? It's tough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to have at the core, you have to have a good concept, right? And you need to basically have a vision of what you want the event to be. But I think it's very important that it's 360, right? When making an event, you have to make sure the right crowd is there for the event. You know, a lot of times our success, people would come to me and be like, "Get me DJs, get me music." I'm like, it doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? Because it's like you think they're good DJs and they are, but they're presented in the environment of the right people. So it's not simple to just take like one component, get this DJ and put them here, because that crowd or that space just doesn't work, right? So it's important to have the 360 attitude. Start with the crowd, the space, the sound, and the music, and then build everything up from there, production, operations, etc.
And you guys always excelled in pretty much all of these elements, but primarily, at least from my point of view, the concept of the crowd, building your core culture of people that have been there with you guys from day one, before it was even called Nacelle.
Yeah.
It was rotations and you know, and
Well, it's still Nacelle.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it was Rotation was one of the nights.
yeah,
that
it
we
was
made.
one of the
Yeah,
brands.
correct.
And then moving from there to things like house sessions and B-side and creating all these different musical night brands that
Yeah.
you guys did.
So that was like the era of the music and the DJs and the small parties. Now we've become more of a, you know, bigger event company, kind of like focused on, you know, like Sandbox and festivals and bigger things, as well as corporate events and all kinds of stuff. But back then it was just the mood of the city required some extra programming, and we just jumped on the opportunity. I mean, I like all kinds of music. Like I've DJ'd all those nights because I don't like to play one genre. And we've been lucky to have just a loyal crowd that just build. You know, we didn't go big. You can start now and go big. That's a model that works, right? But then, you know, you're a big events company. You don't end up with a loyal organic following. Because we did about 6-7 years of events that were like smaller, we built a very loyal following. And so that we're still benefiting from the loyalty and the appreciation that everyone has for our events.
And that appreciation, I'm sure, will long continue.
I hope.
And I hope so too. And I'm going to get into Sandbox, I think, shortly. But I also want to highlight the difference, or pick your mind on the difference between organizing an event like Sandbox, for example, a Nacelle event, versus organizing an event for another client. You know,
Okay.
because there are two different areas of, you know, you've got your own goals or KPIs for your events, and clients usually want to throw events for their own goals and purposes. Where do you draw the line of you know, quality and experience with regards to your events in contrast to a client-sponsored event, for example?
What do you mean by the line of quality? What do you mean by that?
Like, how different is it for you to organize something for you versus organizing something for a client? So if you're really convinced that this is how it should be for a client, how would you approach it versus how would you approach it
Yeah.
in your own?
I mean, it is, with the clients, it can be frustrating sometimes. You see things on a 360 level because you've done it so many times. The client is very focused on, you know, their brand, and they don't necessarily always see how all the pieces fit together because they don't, you know, but at the same time, there's also a financial difference, right? Like one is you're very focused on sales and marketing for our own events because you have to monetize them. Whereas with the client event, all our effort goes into production operation, what the client wants, right? So that extra friction and collaboration that happens, you can deal with it because you have more space, right? Because you're not worried about marketing, selling the event, right? You're building their concept, and it's something they've imagined. But in general, the clients we've worked with have a very strong approach to quality as well. And, you know, while sometimes we're like, it should have been done this way or that way, it always comes out like you end up being proud and realize that it's good to have someone else's input as well.
So from your point of view, if it's a client sort of a driven event, where do you as Tito draw the lines of success for it? If the client gets what they want and all's good, or if you can reach a middle ground and convince them with what should be the right thing done in an event?
No, I mean, in the end, the client's spending money. What the most important thing is that they, you know, even if it's like, I feel it should have been done this way, it's only because maybe I felt that that's it would give more impact for their money, right? It's really about judging it from the perspective, A, are they happy? Are they happy with our service? Are they happy with our team? But also, have they achieved what they set out to achieve? These events cost money, right? Like events are getting more and more expensive. And so it's very important that they feel like, you know, they hit their KPIs and they hit the targets that they want, right? And so really for me, any friction is more like just about making sure that that happens, right?
Very interesting. Moving on to Sandbox. Potentially, I think it's the biggest, and I always like to add the word the realest music festival, at least electronic music festival in the entire region.
Thank you.
And I want to highlight the word realist because I think that's what it's all about people getting together somewhere and celebrating life, music, and without any judgment or any of the frictions that can happen in other or in festival environments in general. What is it, 13 years now?
This coming year is going to be the 12th edition.
12th edition.
Yeah, in terms of years, it's been, I guess, this year 14 years since the first one. But that's because there was Corona and 2 years were skipped. And there was 1 year skipped in the very beginning as well.
How does Tito measure the success of a sandbox? What makes one sandbox more successful than another one?
I think growth. I think when you see new people, if they kind of adapt to the environment, like basically, I mean, it's hard to say, right? It's just kind of it. I feel it like just in the days after, right? You're like, okay,
This was a great addition.
This is a great addition. But I mean, honestly, what we're trying to do is grow the festival slowly. We never want to like suddenly double the population, any of that. The key is that everyone who's coming experiences truly what we're trying to provide. And I think there's a kind of freedom that's in Sandbox that doesn't exist in any events in the region or even in our other events. Basically, like a lot of people feel that it's like an intense party. They don't realize it's 30,000 square meters. There's a massive food court. There's all kinds of things to do, installations, little stages of 20 people. There's over, like, if you include the little stages, we're at over 8 stages. It's you get what you want out of it. You know what I mean? And like a lot of people think it's more intense than they realize it is when they show up, and they're really, you know, blown away, and they're able to just, you know, ground themselves and enjoy the festival.
And I think people would generally be a lot more blown away if they understand the amount of logistics that go into something like Sandbox.
Yeah.
Everything from booking the DJs, actually selecting which DJs to play, which I know is in its
We've
own
been
right.
working on it for the last 3-4 months, right? I mean, we're at, you know, the lineup is almost programmed. Like you start early, year on year. You know, acquiring talent, curating talent. You have to start earlier every year. It's getting much more competitive globally. Lots of markets are opening up, so you have to be very. You have to plan it well. Even something as simple as in Sandbox, a lot of the stages and the elevations, they're all made of sand. So
'Cause it's a sandbox.
For three weeks, we're bringing in thousands of cubic meters of sand to basically build all these elevations and sound baffles to create the stages near each other. And it's a very unique production. I mean, obviously over 400 people are working on the production. Another 300 people working on the operations, if not more. If you include all the teams, probably 400 as well. It's a big production.
And being, of course, one of the first festivals, at least to my knowledge, that have, in the middle of the desert, implemented like an RFID bracelet system. You know, you charge, you know, you go and you buy your stuff. You've got your lockers. How difficult is that to bring it to life in the middle of the desert? And how long does it take from, all right, here's a desert area, to, ladies and gentlemen, the doors are open, come on in?
Well, you touched on two things. I mean, when it comes to the RFID, back to the computer engineering, right? So we have our own in-house system that we've developed since 2015 with a friend, and it's moved on to, it's been, you know, redone many times. But I saw it in operation in 2015. I'm like, we have to have this in Sandbox, and we put it together. And yeah, so that was even globally early for like still globally festivals hadn't fully adopted that, and it really opened up possibilities on the operations. It made it a lot easier to centralize and do everything.
It made it a better experience for
Yeah.
the festival goer themselves.
Exactly. You open up, Achilles' heel of like network and technology, and so if back to our point of big failure in 2017, the network went down for a few hours on a Thursday night, and that was that was a what do you call it?
A
A
predicament.
wake up call. Yeah. So that you realize the importance. Yeah, and you really, once you go fully digital on your festival, you really have an Achilles heel. You have to really take care of that. To your other question, in terms of like build and desert and then sandbox gates open, that's about a month.
Wow.
Yeah, that's low. Like obviously production always gets mad. I always try to pressure them to do it in a tighter time. It's a little more than a month when you include the set, like the sand, right?
I want to move on or back actually to the process of music selection. A lot of event promoters or event organizers would just pick up their phones and say, all right, who are the best, most well-known DJs? Who is most trending right now? Let's book them, him, and her. Nacelle and Tito personally, you've always been keen on taking the risk of, introducing new sounds and new talents to people. And that's a risk. I mean, it's much safer to get the Tiestos, for the lack of a better name, to get the headliner names.
Yeah.
And people will pay for that. But to get them to pay for a DJ they've never heard of before, that's a risk, but it also must be a joy and its reward on the other side.
Definitely. But keep in mind, times have changed, right? So when we started, while Facebook and Instagram existed, promoting a party on Facebook was just crafting a well-written paragraph.
True.
No imagery, nothing.
No
right?
algorithm.
No algorithm, nothing. Even the early days of Instagram, the algorithm wasn't running the show, right? So things have really changed on that front, musically, artistically, the way we approach things, the way anyone approaches definitely has changed things. But we've always been about a balance. So like I've never tried to introduce extreme, right? So it's always, you try to create a balance. It was always, okay, you don't know this artist, but it's in the space where, it can appeal to more people than, let's say, an extremely minimal DJ, or, you know what I mean? Once we've grown things like Sandbox, that's what I love the most, because of the many stages. You have your more classic names that are going to help you push sales and all of that. And even that, we don't like to go too crazy with that. We really like to create a balance. And then you're able to really just get insane sounds and different, that's what's nice about a festival. It gives you the freedom of like programming smaller acts and smaller DJs. But definitely when it comes to creation, I have to say times have changed, right? I mean, we're not going to turn this into a complaint about the algorithm thing, but
no.
I mean, things are more competitive in Egypt and globally, and the way an artist approaches everything, it's very different now.
I have a personal appreciation for Sandbox from the element that it was one of the festivals that gave a platform for a lot of our own local talents, and you championed a lot of our own local talents, putting them in peak times.
Yes.
You could
As much as we could.
That's a risk. It's easy to say, all right, here's a bunch of headliners, famous names from all over, one after the other. But no, you chose to break that up with, hey, here's a Ali Gouda, here's a Misty, here's one of our local champions. How do you think that makes you feel? How do you think that has impacted our local scene? And how do you think that makes the local DJs feel as well?
Well, I mean, I think it feels like they're participating in the story of developing. Yeah, I mean, if we're going to talk about electronic music, because that's what we're talking about, yeah, and developing the electronic music culture in Egypt, I think the DJs all feel a sense of ownership in it. And, there's many other brands now that are doing parties, and the DJs have created their own collectives, and they're all kind of, they're getting inspired. And for everyone always aspires, let's say, to play Sandbox. And so I'm very proud that that's kind of like a bucket list for a lot of the local DJs. We're still at 50% local regional talent at Sandbox. We think that's very important, and we do the best we can to give peak slots. And that's what's nice when you open up other stages at Sandbox. You can have people play peak slots also, the locals. I mean, they've been a part of, you'd have to ask them, right?
We'll get them on the
It's been
show.
a joy. No, but it's really nice to hear the international feedback so a lot of DJs who come to Sandbox, they stay and listen to the locals, and they're always super impressed. And that's what I really like. And it's not like, some local scenes where, electronic music is not prevalent in Egypt, right? So it'd be very easy to have your DJ always wants to play the popular stuff. No, man, the DJs here, quite the opposite. It's actually harder to find DJs who are playing like the popular music. Everyone here is really trying to make his own sound and take his own niche. And so many of the DJs are playing, things that are not like main stage music. So it's very, very cool.
It is cool,
Yeah,
and
they're very creative here.
and you mentioned the word regional, which hit a nerve with me because in the earlier Sandbox days, it was a Egyptian crowd.
Correct.
But throughout the years, that ratio is changing and changing rapidly.
Indeed.
Whether it's in the regional talent that's playing on stage or whether it's the festival goers themselves. I mean, last few Sandboxes that I attended, it's a cosmopolitan hodgepodge of people from all over the world.
Yeah.
So that affects tourism. That affects standards and of tourism. So you're flying the flag there. What do you do to maintain the experience of whether it's the regional talent or the people that are coming from abroad?
Well, I mean, again, it's about programming something really original that doesn't feel like a copy of other festivals globally. And I think that's what, Sandbox is a real export. I really look at it like I was just sitting with some people, foreigners yesterday talking, and they're talking about how much of a reputation it has abroad. And I'm very happy that that's been achieved. And I think, obviously the location in El Guna helps a lot, of course, because it's an easy and very nice destination to enjoy. And so it's gaining international recognition. Basically even now all the big agents, they approach us and they're like, okay, so when's the next Sandbox? It's very well known now as a stop in the region. So it's been great.
And may that greatness continue long ahead. I want to move on to a different element now. Throughout my personal career, I've done numerous, hundreds and hundreds of different sort of events all over the country. And hands down, for me personally, the most difficult place to run an event logistically, mentally, and beyond doubt, could be the most rewarding though, is the pyramids of Giza. From just you're in the desert, the amount of security involved. So I know how difficult it is to work and to organize something at the pyramids. And you guys, you went on and raised the bar with another of your musical brands, which is Live at the Pyramids. You've had Maroon 5 and you've had the epic Red Hot Chili Peppers. I think that was 2019?
Correct, yeah.
2019. How difficult was it to throw something like that in 2019? And my second part of the question, versus today, we're seeing an event at the pyramids every weekend. Tiesto at the pyramids, Anima at the pyramids, massive names around the world. Again, you blazed a trail in that direction, but how difficult was it to begin with?
Well, I mean, in terms of bringing those bands, I mean, the credit goes to my partner, Karim Shaiti, and he's the one who kind of had the vision to bring the Chili Peppers. On the execution side, it was, there hadn't been you had Yanni before that, but it was in the sound and light.
Scorpions, you had Michel Jarre.
Before,
that was way
right?
before that, yeah.
And so it was kind of, Orascom still hadn't fully taken over the private management. So it was kind of like blazing new territory tremendously, and also putting on a rock show in Egypt has its own challenges. And so, but it all kind of just came together, and it was a really, really good experience. And I think, it's just difficult. I think you're still kind of reinventing the wheel every time you go there. It's starting to get better because I see the other events, they're repeating more, and you can see certain things are being repeated in terms of the way it's being operated. So some consistency is coming. But for a long time, it was like every time it's like you're starting from scratch. And it's like, everyone involved doesn't have the learnings of the time before, right?
No precedent, yeah.
No precedent. And when it comes to the government, a lot of the officials and a lot of the police who are responsible, they rotate. So it's always a new personality. So you're not picking up on the learnings, right?
That segues me into a great question. We've got the pyramids. We've got all these amazing locations in Egypt that can be venues for incredible parties. And you've seen it from both sides.
Yeah.
What would you say is the overall recipe for success if, as event organizers, as a crowd, and as the government entities that are involved, what needs to be done or what can be done to make it a better experience overall for you as an organizer, for them as the government, and for me as someone who's going to enjoy the event?
I mean, without getting into too many specifics, I think the key is to have a long-term goal and really like 10 years out and make sure that, all stakeholders are looking towards that goal and being able to reach that goal. I think, unfortunately, sometimes short-term
Short-term gain.
short-term
Yeah.
gain is like that, and there isn't this kind of full long. I mean, there's a long-term vision in terms of we want to have the best events in Egypt, right? But that's not specific enough, right? You have to be a bit more specific about what you want to achieve, how you want to present these locations, what artists are and are not allowed to do, how to position the brand correctly as a country, as a space, all of that. How to create a system where it's easier to organize all the different logistical concerns. So I feel there just needs to be a bit more of a long-term vision in terms of unlocking the true potential of events here.
And with that long-term vision, where do you see it 10, 20 years from now?
I mean, no doubt it's going to get better and better, right? So like even without that vision, the hunger's there. So, trial and error, I mean, that's actually the number one thing, right? And so there's a lot of trial and error happening everywhere. So I think in 10, 20 years, I think it'll be very different.
And we're in a day and age where, I think you mentioned this earlier, anyone can now throw a party, and throwing a good party is a great endeavor for anyone.
Anyone could have thrown a party at any point
Exactly.
in history.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
even
these days,
4,000 years
as a
ago.
young and up and coming, maybe potential, I dream of becoming an event organizer. I've been inspired by Nacelle or by Sandbox, and I want to have my own Nacelle or my own Sandbox. Learnings along your way, what advice that you'd give to those up and coming event organizers?
Well, I mean, in Egypt, because it's still new, it's obviously competitive, but it's still kind of open. I think the number one thing is don't quit. If you don't quit, like the environment here is such that if you don't quit and you learn from your failures, you will succeed. I really believe in that. Like, and there's other markets that are like hyper developed, and that doesn't necessarily apply. I mean, it does, right? You have the whole never quit, right? But you know what I mean, right? When it's really hyper developed, it can be a little different. Like, the Dubai market is much different in terms of events, right?
It's a season and it's go
Very
and it
different
ends. Yeah.
and very, very competitive, very based on money, all of that, right? But here, if, just don't stop, A lot of people have done some great stuff, but then they stop after 6 months. And that's fine if they want to stop and they want to do something else, right?
What would make them stop, you think? Financials, not getting a reward that they think that they should be getting?
I'm not sure. Various reasons. I mean, sometimes you just want to change interests. Some people also, some people do it for the wrong reasons. They feel that I'm going to do it because of whatever, and then they realize that they're not rewarded in the way they think. I don't mean just financially, but, because it looks sexy, right? I mean, an event it's awesome, right? Now I have my own party, right? But I think you realize that it is work, and that's a
Aspiration
challenge I
versus
face
reality.
here. I always try to change. Like I feel sometimes the word here, hafla, kind of undersells. Like these are events. It's a business. It's an industry. There's specifics to it. I mean, I'm not talking about, let's say, you're more like small musical collectives, but once you get into events, it's work. I mean,
Speaking of that work, what are the toughest challenges that you as Tito face when organizing events at the size of Sandbox or Shorelines or something at the pyramids, personally?
well, obviously, making the finances work is a big one. Safety is always on our mind. It's always something, it's a big responsibility to host all those people. So mainly those are the two big, and of course you want everyone to like it, right? But sometimes you just have to kind of not worry about that and just do it, right?
And that moves me to internal dialogue. In EMIT Talks, we feel that as a successful individual, how you talk to people starts with how you talk to yourself. And it's quite important. How does Tito talk to himself? What's Tito's pep talk to Tito pre-Sandbox,
No, I personally always go through kind of a down and like what the hell's going on. There's always a period where like you have a hard time keeping it together. I mean, personally, me, right? And and the people around me and the people who love me see it and they're like, it's gonna work out, and I'm just like, no, but of course it's gonna work out. But there's always like a week, 2 weeks where it's really just the pressure's a lot, and you know, I think that's normal. And then you come through and
But what's the pep talk? What does Tito tell Tito in those situations?
I'm not sure I pep I think I just go through. I'm just like, this too shall pass, right? Like,
Head
just
down.
get through it.
Get
That's
through
it. Yeah.
Speaking of getting through it, you've gotten through so many different brands of music nights, from, you know, the funk-based sounds of B-sides, the epic house sessions that started in Cairo, and then it moved all over the country, to things like Live at the Pyramids and Sandbox. And then we went to Sahel. You started up a completely different festival called Shorelines. It could have been super easy to repeat the exact same Sandbox success model in Sahel, but you decided to go a different route with Shorelines.
Yeah, well, that comes from the common love of live music initially. I mean, it's changed now. It's more of an electronic DJ festival now. It's kind of shifted over the years. Sahel's hard to manage band logistics because bands have a lot of, you know, the 5 people on stage travel as 20 sometimes, right? So it can be pretty tough. But I mean, it was the vision of Al Bay, basically. What they wanted. We had the common goal. It's their event, and we had their trust to kind of build it in a shared common vision, and that's kind of how it grew. You know, obviously Karim likes music as much as I do, and we like diversity, and that's kind of how it started, right? It's changed a little bit because as any project in Sahel real estate, as it gets more developed, right, you're losing different pieces of land that you can work on, and the whole thing, you have to just kind of adapt and grow, right? So the formula's changed, and I think still a lot of, you always have new people. You'd be surprised. I mean, we have a very loyal crowd, but that it's still, every year it's always like over 50% new people, right? Maybe even 70%. It's always, you see the familiar faces, but there's always people who don't have any context, right? And I always remind my team sometimes when they're holding on to the past, I'm like, a lot of people haven't seen this before. This is the first time they get introduced to this, right? So we don't have to hold old concepts, or, you know, everything adapts. But basically, Shorelines came together. I think also because Almaz is not in the core of Sahel. The core of Sahel is a little intense. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's how it came together.
So from Shorelines, Sandbox, and also, you know, your own nights and brands that you've created, to corporate events and, you know, events for other clients, and it's not just musical events, hospitality, whatever it is. What's the balance here? For Tito, what is a successful balance of events for us versus events that we need to take to pay the bills as a business?
I mean, that's a little secret sauce.
But at the end of the day, we're blessed to be in there.
I think it's just you kind of want to do them equally. I mean, don't forget that when you do events, even your bigger events, even if they don't work out, they still market you, and you end up being able to get clients who are willing to do interesting things. I mean, we don't take any corporate events, right? Obviously, usually, if we can, there's a strong musical component to it. But yeah, I think it's just about, I mean, I don't want to say 50-50. I mean, I don't mean it financially. I think just effort in your brain, it's good to have both kind of representing a nice chunk of what you do.
And in our local markets, whether it's for you know, events and festivals and corporate events, there's quite a bit of healthy competition happening between
definitely.
a lot of the event
A lot of
organizers.
great people out there doing good stuff.
How did you all get to this point of being, you know, saying, hey, we're running the industry, so we need to kind of collect ourselves, acquiesce, and set the rules of engagement between how we all work together and as competition even?
I mean, it kind of happens informally, unspoken, kind of. Even when I entered the market, there was a very healthy respect, and I was, I mean, quote unquote, welcomed, you know, but none of that happens literally, right? I think I think because it's growing so fast, I think there's just a lot of it just kind of all happens without words, but I think everyone respects each other's stuff, right, basically.
How do you approach competition?
Crush them.
Yeah.
No, I approach competition as they're all, they open doors, right? The more competition you have, the more doors that are being open across the board, right? So competition's very healthy. And it brings a lot of attention, like there's always the example of, you open a burger shop, but then open another burger shop next to it. The original shop is selling more, and that's kind of the mentality.
And I want to focus lastly on your favorite moments throughout the years at Nacelle events, your own personal highlight reel. Take us back to Power of Stellar. What are the moments that are always going to stick with Tito's head throughout your Nacelle career? I'm sure there's many, but there must be like a top 3, a top 5.
I mean, many of the sandboxes, Red Hot Chili Peppers for sure. That was a very unique, events, you're always on the phone and there's always issues, right? For a while they were performing, my phone didn't ring once. There was just something really magical about it. I just got to focus on the entire performance. Like literally the phone did not ring, which is unheard of even in a small event, right? So it was really cool. I got to just watch what we made and what we, it was really nice. And that was a big highlight.
Well, Tito, may you always enjoy watching the creations that you are out to endeavor and create. And then may we see much, much, much more of you and all the successful events that you and your team are purveying to us.
Looking forward to the future. It's bright.
Thank you for joining us on EMIT Talks.
Thank you.